All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to.
Take 20.
Take 20. Okay, so let's start. Let's go in. Let's smash this out of the park. To Matt, first question. Name, family, what the year's been like so far.
Thank you, JL. Long time listener. First time caller. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for saying yes.
Yeah, pleasure.
Good to
Yeah.
have you catch up.
Yeah, my name's Matt. Most people call me Bondi because of the surname, so that works well as well.
Blondie.
Bondi.
Matt Bond.
Yeah. Yep. Very common.
Oh, it's different online.
It is. I have to. Yeah, I have to kind of, what's the word? De-identify myself, technically, when you're working in counselling.
Yeah.
So that answers that next question. So I work as a counsellor and psychotherapist, and I work part-time as a disability support worker as well.
That's fun.
Sick.
Yeah.
You got any brothers or sisters?
I do. I've got 2 brothers and 1 sister. They're pretty awesome.
That's fresh.
Yeah.
Do you know, in your last trip, I thought you were going to Russia.
My last trip, I think a few people thought that as well. Yeah. It was because I was catching up with some friends from Russia, but we're kind of not wanting to be in Russia at the moment. And so they were in Sri Lanka and we were meeting in the middle.
So like the timing was when the Russian and Ukraine thing is happening. You're like, oh yeah, this seems like a nice time to go. But I'm sure you planned your tickets way long.
Well,
a
we've
long
been on
time ago.
lockdown for 2 years, so we couldn't leave. Yeah, so it's been a long wait. And some of those friends I've been meaning to catch up with for over a decade. So it's just the fact that I'm finally not studying. I can actually afford a ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild.
That was a long student life, you've lived,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
Nate? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't give you a name before that.
Oh my god.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Nate. And
Do you like to party?
no, that's just you, mate. Yeah. So Nate, family, mom, dad, younger brother and sister. Occupation.
Oh, you're the oldest.
Yeah, I am the
Yeah, cool.
oldest. Yeah.
Should I have mentioned I have parents? I thought that was assumed.
You just mysteriously appeared.
Sorry, Mum. Sorry, Dad.
That's the wrong one.
Straight after Mother's Day as well. Oof.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it
fresh.
was my dad's birthday yesterday as
Wow.
well.
It's a good thing they don't listen to this podcast. You're safe for now.
Chaplaincy at the moment is my occupation.
Yeah.
At Alta One College. That's fresh this year. And that's about it, I
Yeah.
think.
And I'm Jean-Luc, and Nate and we host this podcast together. I'm one of 7, firstborn, and I also work at Old One as an education assistant, work with youth, and do a bit of media on the side as well for church. All right, let's go. Favorite dessert
I can't.
or a guilty pleasure?
Yeah, guilty pleasure. Because I don't usually have it very often, but I really like a good caramel slice. It's just perfection, I think. They got
Yes.
that one right. And I don't really like sweet things or desserts, so
Yeah.
I break the rules for that one.
Break every rule. Like Jesus broke the chains.
Oh my.
Too soon. All right. Nate, you got any? dessert?
Anything French pastry, really.
We've eaten my little croissant.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Crepes.
I like a good carb that's fluffy.
Good fluffy carb.
Yeah.
My
It's
guilty
kind of
pleasure.
deceiving, isn't it?
Yeah, all that
pretty much.
butter and a croissant. You're like, oh, yeah, no. And it's like low carbs, but fat. It's just absolutely fat in there.
Totally worth it. Totally worth it.
I tell you what, I tried my first crepe. If I must say it like that, oui. I tried my first crepe when I went to Sydney in 2016. Oui.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was delicious, huh? Oui.
Cool.
Little bit good. But my guilty pleasure, I would say, is a brownie.
Not snail.
contrary to popular belief. No, so I can I come back from that? I can't come back from that. I learned how to make Nutella brownies, and that is now a staple
that's
in my house.
Oh, nice.
People who wouldn't know you, people sometimes. What's something that people wouldn't know you unless they lived with you? And then tell us about your favorite time of the day following that. So, I will probably say, if you didn't live with me, you wouldn't actually know that I was a introvert.
Mm.
And my favorite time of the day is nighttime. I hate morning people. Sorry, I hate mornings, not morning people. I don't hate people.
Look
Morning,
forward to
morning
your
people
emails.
literally includes everybody in the morning, you realize. You're just walking around, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. It's very creepy. It's very, very
It's a good
creepy.
thing we don't live in America because they're all in danger. Otherwise, guns. That was the reference. Guns.
We got
Straight
it
away.
But thank you. Thank you for shooting us straight.
Onto it. All right. Yeah, go on.
Something people probably wouldn't know about me, and I didn't ever think I would actually become this way either. I love anime, and me and the housemates love to just chill out every once in a while
Get out of here.
and watch some anime.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think we're on.
You're
that.
like on that end and that end.
Yeah,
You just bring it all together.
I'm an outlier. And my housemates and anybody that's lived with me over the years, and I probably picked this up from dad, and my siblings have picked this up from dad too, is when we lose stuff, we get really angry. We're just like, no, the world is ending kind of thing because I can't find this one thing. So we've all had to slowly learn how to kind of take a step back. We don't take it out on housemates, but housemates, they just hear it. And then you apologize, and they're like, we know. But now I've started to realize that's kind of a helpful little thing, because when I start to lose things, that's my little telltale for I've got too much on my plate. I need to look under the bonnet and see what's going on in the engine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And favourite time of day usually was nighttime. There's something quieter about it. It's easier and simpler, and you can watch the TV without having it turned up very loud. You know, you can soak up that sound. But I've started to really fall in love with the golden hour. And so when I'm coming out of work sometimes in the city at 5 p.m, oh, that is just stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Golden hour is a photographer's dream,
Yeah.
both morning and night.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you. Nate. Tell
Tell
us all your secrets.
I think something people probably wouldn't know. I don't know. I don't mind just. What is it? Well, I don't mind strumming the guitar a bit. I don't do it all the time. But I think I've written a few things here and there.
Oh, so you're a songwriter.
No, it's not that. It's just more like thoughts onto a paper. That music just helps. I think that's probably something I do to kind of de-stress from, like I was telling you earlier, a bit of a crazy week.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think
I think that does actually make you a songwriter. Every songwriter I know has said
No,
that.
terrible.
Nah, bro, I'm just trying to express myself.
I think it's more just like a prayer sort of thing, really.
Yeah.
Because I like
Okay.
nature and I like worship, but I just can't just not do prayer and something else at the same time.
Right.
So,
It's a bit like the Psalms, eh?
I don't know. It's very it's a bit raw. It's a bit out of
Have you read
crazy.
Psalms?
Yeah, I know, but this.
I read a psalm the other day, and it was like, "Blessed is the person who would grab the children." He's talking about
Imprecatory.
of the
We're going there.
Babylonians,
Yeah.
and dash them against stones. Like take babies and strike them against stones. I'm like, and that's how it ends.
Yeah.
There's nothing after that. It's like sing that. Okay.
It's pretty gnarly. C.S. Lewis was like, how did that make it in? Yeah. But I think what you're saying is you really like to do stuff, Nate, when you're praying.
Yeah, like I know everyone does it. Like when they're praying, they get like super raw. But I think if anyone didn't like lived with me, would actually understand. Like I cuss quite a bit in my prayers,
Oh yeah.
Mm.
and like just get it all out. Like
Mm.
I think there's a there's a way that you're supposed to be a chaplain in certain circumstances and stuff. But I think it's like the last time I remember being this way was probably when I was playing rugby. It was just like F this, F that, and everything. So I think that rawness.
Yeah.
I think if you didn't know me or lived with me, you probably wouldn't know that.
So you're kind of feeling a bit pushed
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like
beyond your comfort zone kind of thing. Or?
oh, it's more just like a time where it's just like I feel like I'm at my most vulnerable and my most honest, I guess you could say.
With God.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
God, or just like getting things out.
Mm.
And rugby used to help that, but then concussions didn't help.
Yeah, super cool.
It's interesting how
Go
that's
on.
kind of like you can't get around vulnerability. Like if you're really going to pray, it's hand in hand with that. And
Yeah.
it's not easy sometimes. So yeah, it pours out what
Yeah.
we've got going on.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also a bit stupid trying to not be vulnerable
Yeah.
when you're praying. It's
Yeah.
like, well, not stupid, but
We're good at it.
stupid. Well, yeah,
we're
we-
good at
because
not
there's
being
a qu-
vulnerable. That's what.
True.
If you know how we're
Very
always talking
true.
about adulting. How adulting is so impressive. One of the adulting things that isn't impressive is we don't know when to actually be scared. We don't know what it is to kind of
Yeah.
actually be vulnerable.
That's so true.
A kid on a train crying has got more prowess
Mm.
than the businessman in their 50s who runs an 500k company or something.
Yeah, doing the
Mm.
same.
That's weird.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
definitely need that vulnerability, but it's not necessarily easily accessed. And sometimes
Yeah.
we need to cuss. Sometimes we need to kind of actually let it pour out.
There's not many safe spaces, I guess you would say.
There's not
Even
many
in-
safe spaces.
Yeah. I don't know. As in, like, there's not many as in thinking chaplaincy stuff where kids feel safe with you. That it's just like everything. But it's like the space. Like I don't know, for church stuff, it's like I don't know if you guys feel it, but sometimes when you're in a church situation or your friend, it's like you do always sometimes have a filter that comes up. It's like I do want to talk about this, but I'll just use the cliche to kind of tell you how I might be feeling, so you can kind of leave me alone instead of like telling you how it really is,
Yeah.
because you're more scared of how people will react to you rather than the opportunity for, I don't know.
Is that maybe because you've been leading a lot of these people? And so,
Potentially it's that
because I know,
whole-
like, for some spaces in churches, even different spaces, like you kind of, when you put on a hat, it's a lot harder to get out of the perceived definition of what that's meant to look like in a workspace. So, like a church, if you're leading, then I don't know how recent it's been that leaders are embracing becoming more vulnerable. If you're leading a small group, if you're discipling one person, like you have a relationship with them and they go and ask you, "Hey Nate, how are you?"
Yeah. It's
Is that-
very
yeah.
rare that just like, oh yeah.
For the listener, JL just cringed and looked like
I did not cringe. I was
He was
trying to
gonna
make a
cry.
cry face.
that's what people do when they cry. JL, they cringe.
They cringe when they cry. It's so
You've never seen
uncomfortable.
yourself in a mirror crying before?
Oh my gosh.
Ah.
Yeah, but it's I don't know. There's filters everywhere, not only on social media.
There was something interesting. I remember there was a mentor that I had that it really stayed with me. He had said something and he learned it from an author as well. We often, if we find ourselves in leadership or just in any particular kind of space where we're the ones carrying others, we can often forget that we're human.
Oof.
And that's a really big part of it. If we forget that we're human, then we are seeing ourselves as the role and only the role. And any role that we have has limitations to it. And the fundamental limitation, I mean, there's lots, but the fundamental one is that we're human. And we, forget to feel. We forget to allow ourselves to feel. We forget. And so he used to say that, like, in training me up, and he also, I think he put it in a book as well, and there was the author that he'd read it from as well that he quoted, and it was just like, most of the people that he goes and sees pastorally is essentially people that have forgotten that somewhere along the lines that they're still human.
And that is supposed to continue to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty true. Because I think it's probably also, speaking from experience, it probably is a little bit more, it's easier, not necessarily natural. I don't know if there's a naturalness about it, but it's probably easier to kind of slot into a role and just fulfill those parameters, compartmentalize, per se, than it is to be vulnerable, I guess, or be human, whatever that means. Because, I mean, depending on the level of pressure that you're under and expectation.
Well, because it's messy and it's not controlled.
Yeah.
Spills out.
Man, vulnerability is so messy. So
Interestingly enough, I mean, it depends on what the cost is. So in
what do you mean?
Well, in certain settings, it might be all right to be vulnerable. There might be some people that are, always vulnerable. You're like, all right, take it down a notch. I just met you and I don't need to know that story. How many people have you met where that's kind of come up, And so
Yeah.
there's a cost. And sometimes I think there are some costs we're not willing to pay. And whether it's vulnerability or it's something else, we might not necessarily be willing to pay. And so it's got to do with our subjective world. That's usually where vulnerability lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
If we're feeling like we'd rather play the role and to have some control, then we will probably make more of our identity based off of that, and we'll see ourselves through that lens. But if we're willing to be a bit more honest with ourselves and into a maybe less safer area, then we might allow ourselves to be more vulnerable. But it'll cost us more.
Yes.
So there's usually a cost involved. What we're
Yeah.
willing to pay kind of lets us see what our past record has been.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's good.
And I don't know if, like, people generally want to pay that kind of cost. Cause and if I'm hearing you correctly, my thoughts immediately go, the kind of cost that you go, you might pay, that might be involved with being vulnerable, might be the level of trust that people have with you because of how they perceive you being vulnerable means. Like it might mean, I don't think I'll come to you anymore with all this stuff, or I might not ask you how you are anymore because, because like obviously, there is the extreme of the people who are just like they're just an open book and they don't understand boundaries. But the other side of that, I think, as well, is that with people who, and I've got a couple of friends who are authentic enough that what you see is what you get, and so they're okay with being vulnerable. And the flip side of that is how it's handled by whoever it is you're being vulnerable with. It's how it's handled, because that's also is one of the phenomenons that I see is that when you realize it, well, when you go and you're vulnerable and you decide, hey, I'm just gonna lay it out there. The way it's handled, if you're not prepared for for what might happen, like obviously you can't control people's reactions, but the way it's handled can very much lead you to conclusions about whether or not you decide to stay vulnerable or you climb up some more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, the cost you definitely got to count it. Yeah, it's good. Good advice. How? Well, I'm gonna ask this as well. What's the best piece of advice you've gotten this year so far?
This year.
This year, and that you're actually applying. We don't want advice that is heard and unapplied. He's like a man building his house on the sand. Too soon?
No, not soon enough. I think be more playful and be a bit less serious, especially in my job.
Oh, at work.
At work and just life in general, I think, because it flows. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Playful.
That's really cool. The flow as well.
I think because I think there's always, always play the comparison game, and especially as a chaplain sort of thing, there's certain expectations you have from top down with what you're supposed to do in the college. But I think each person has their own abilities and their own kind of thing that they bring to the role. And I think I've, finally figured out that for the kids that I'm working with, the playfulness and just having fun actually is that missing part that they actually never had the chance to do as much. And I think one of my old work, like Janet, who was my teacher before.
Yo, what up, Janet?
What up,
She's
Janet?
amazing.
Crazy Janet.
She's so good.
Basically, it just challenged me, like, just stop being so serious, and also just don't think about the process, because I used to just really just love, like, I look back on journals from years ago and just this guy, like this young 20-year-old is like convicting the hell out of me, like just writing, and then goes into prayer about stuff, and then here I am trying to be so serious about trying to get things right. And the playfulness, I think, just releases that creativity in me, I think. And also, I don't know, for some way, I don't know if you guys find this, but creativity for me and playfulness kind of releases a more prayerful lifestyle, and I think I get more intimate with the Holy Spirit in that way. And I think this year, learning to just have fun, like in such, the last couple of years have been so serious for work, for myself. I think playfulness has actually helped me to not only not take things too seriously, but actually be able to, in one way, be vulnerable but not like trying to like bleed on people, but like be vulnerable in the sense of like it's okay to make mistakes, showing an example that mistakes are part of life, and that in a safe environment you can actually grow through it. And I think that's something in the last 2 years of doing youth and other things, there's been kind of I think I gotten too caught up in the cog and the mechanism of ministry and stuff, and sometimes kind of using that as the, what would you say, using it as a replacement sometimes of my faith journey, and just like doing church because it helps me to stay a Christian rather than being a Christian to like being an apprentice of Jesus to help grow the church, and the other way around, instead of like being a taker rather than a feeder. And then I also realized that being playful is actually part of my nature, which I actually forgot. And being playful actually releases other people to be more themselves. And I think that was a really good advice for me this year, to like, yeah, even amongst all the craziness, just like one big thing that I've kind of been resonating with for a while, this word wait, for years, just pausing and just waiting on God, and those two things, playfulness and just waiting, because a lot of times we can react to things or situations or moments when God doesn't come through or doesn't speak straight away. And I think I've learned the word wait has actually changed definition so many times in the years prior to now, and playfulness, and it's like, bro, just chill out, man. Like, don't take life so seriously. And I think I read the other day in a journal and just like, get over yourself. I was like, oh, there we go. I used to tell that to all my youth kids all the time. Like, just, it's not about you, get over yourself. And then like, look at me, flip and forget everything. So I think playfulness has helped me to kind of like get back in line with God again. And obviously the flow of that is affects the other parts of my life as well.
For sure.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
super
roundabout
cool.
way of going about it, but
Yeah, no, I like it.
It sounds like a lesson that you knew before as well, and it's kind of come back, maybe even got soaked in a little bit deeper.
yeah. No, I think I don't know when did I start becoming so serious, but yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird how you can forget to be playful when you get older.
I think that started to stop when you got introduced to me, because I don't take many things seriously at all.
That's JL taking the credit.
Like, I mean, we've had some really big conversations, but then like, so I'm just taking drugs.
Surely there's a tune for that.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, that
Wait a second. And now for drugs.
Oh my gosh.
You're asking before how we'd get cancelled? That was it.
Look forward to your emails. Should really set up an email account for that. Be interesting.
Yeah, well.
And then we can read them later in the podcast.
In the podcast, yes. The comments.
I think people do that as a prank thing. They go around deliberately making something really annoying and then like making it clear that there's a complaints line. And they just get all this like comedy gold. It's kind of deceptive, but like
well, it is a
genius.
way
the
to
Karens
come up
of the
with
world gravitate towards this.
Oh,
great way to come up with new content.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I'm not taking credit for that, but I'm like, no way. I'm taking credit for that. But like, I know that we have quite a lot of like super serious chats, and I mean, we've just like started to reconnect even more. But I don't think like, probably like 90% of our interactions online are just memes
Oh yeah.
and
yeah.
things that other people shouldn't see in terms of memes.
It was a daily fix from JL that helped me through some good times and some hard times. Very much appreciated. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like, what was the latest one? It was that TikTok with the dog.
Yeah.
That's here.
TikTok with the dog.
So it's actually so bad. I'm gonna show you. It's actually so bad. I will send you like a naughty one too. That's a fun one. It's this dog that gets run over,
Oh,
and then
yeah,
people come
that's
up
good
to it.
ones.
Wait, I haven't seen this.
And people come up in what?
Maybe I
People
missed
come
this.
Oh, wait, I sent this to you, bro.
Oh, the KFC app.
Have you seen that?
I don't- maybe I haven't.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought I
actually
had.
that's hilarious.
It's a new KFC app.
You sent it to him and not me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I knew you'd like it. Now it's on. It's gonna be online.
Oh,
He's throwing it. The dog's. Oh, messy.
playing on that. Yeah.
That's
Did someone say KFC?
The dog's still there. Oh gosh.
That's so
gosh.
bad.
Oh gosh. That's like a golden rule. You don't kill dogs, and then on top of that, you don't show the dog dead, and then you don't show someone celebrating
That
next
was
to the dog.
intense.
I'm just, to be honest, I'm glad that they didn't actually try to have like Asian actors play because that would
that's
actually
so
cost a massive line.
What do you
Oh.
mean?
Wow. Okay.
Asian
Stir
actors
that
doing
pot.
KFC.
No, not doing KFC.
Oh.
Eating a pet.
Oh dear.
I
I should not have asked. I feel like in 10
feel like
years
that
we're
was
gonna look back.
loaded.
No, genuinely
Like,
was
you were
like,
genuinely
oh yeah, I was
curious. Like,
yeah, yeah.
why?
I wasn't thinking about the. Yeah, I'm not gonna. Anyways,
You're not.
But yeah, 10 years from now, people were like, what's the KFC joke?
No.
We won't remember the jingle and the random kind of juxtapose. It was
Maybe-
just... That's
Maybe
the funny thing about ads is they live so brilliantly for a time. And if they're really,
Mm.
really good, they might even last for a stupidly long amount of time. Like, how many people know what is it? Hey, Marge, the rains are out. And it's
what
like...
is that one?
That's
Oh,
like
it's about the
McCain.
peas, isn't it?
Yeah. Corn
Wow,
and
that's
stuff.
old.
But like that was just said so much when I was growing up. I really thought it was like the funniest thing. It was pretty funny. But like most ads, you just have like it's a seasonal joke, and then after that, you kind of like there's a dog dead in that TikTok, and they're laughing and eating food. Like it just won't connect at all. They won't
No,
get it.
Will not.
Yeah,
It will not. I mean, we have been inundated with KFC ads.
so many.
They're getting. It's not even creative anymore. I don't think it's creative.
You're just waiting for the jingle to hit so you can dance.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I really like your So anyway, I really like the whole idea about playfulness because that's one of the things that I think for me as well has helped me to over time just I guess try and stay sane. I was talking to a friend of mine and I was saying to her like, man, you need to watch comedy. And if you watch naughty comedy, watch naughty comedy. Just something to just makes you laugh so much that it might even be stupid, that you just go, okay, I feel light about life now. So I think it comes from like the Jim Carrey quote about suspending people from their stress. That's what he gets to do. Like I want to be able to suspend people from their, I forget the exact wording, to suspend people from the worries of their life so that they might actually enjoy life a little bit. So, yeah, I appreciate comedians. It's awesome. It's awesome. And now comedy is like even more prevalent. The best type of humor, British humor, I think. It's quippy. It is witty. So smart. It's amazing. But yeah, I think like even with the chats that we have, even the podcasts that we have, I don't think it's like we can have an hour-long serious chat. Like no way, it has not happened. We were in the middle of doing like a really serious podcast, and like my brain's going 100 miles an hour, and I heard a goat. I swear to God, I heard a goat in my head. And I just stop and go, what? Where's that goat coming from? Like, did you hear a goat? He's like, no. Bro, you been hitting drugs? Like, he just looked at me like, what are you talking about? I'm in the middle of this thought and talking, and I hear a goat. Like, where did that come from? Maybe that's just the Lord's way of going, okay, just chill out for a little bit and then restart. But yeah, thanks for that. Any good advice you've received this year?
No. Sorry, fam.
I am the wisest man I know.
There was something.
No,
There was something someone said to me.
could be last year. If we have to reach so far,
Stop.
that's okay.
I feel like I just haven't been in the headspace for it as well, and I probably haven't been able to latch onto it. I can think of stuff from years ago, but I can't. Yeah, I actually can't think of
You
anything.
haven't been in the headspace.
Yeah, I think I've been too busy in the trenches than actually being on a mountaintop and kind of going, oh yeah, I can see some stuff, or someone else is up there, showing me some stuff and giving me some advice. And
Your trenches?
yeah,
What are your trenches?
trenches being feeling like I'm in a war zone. Yeah.
Wow. For how long? If you don't mind me asking.
I'd say at least a few months now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do appreciate those times where there is advice, because it is those pivotal moments where you kind of go, that's a truth I need to hold on to. That's a truth that not only I hold, but it actually holds me. It carries me. There was one from a while back where Dr. Larry Crabb was talking about it in a book and referring to a joy that exists even in suffering. It's a joy that's it's always there. But usually suffering we think of as something that annihilates other things. And he was making the point, well, actually, it can't annihilate this joy. And so I thought, oh, that's a wonderful thing to have.
A joy that
is still there.
Still there through suffering.
Yeah.
What kind of joy is that?
That's a relational joy.
Relational joy.
Yeah, a sense of meaning with our Maker.
Yeah. Okay. And that's carried you?
Oh, yeah.
Or you've held on to it, or both?
Both, yeah. I mean, there are times where I'm foolish and I don't, and it comes back to me.
When you lose something?
When I lose something. I can't find it and lose my temper. But no, it's. I think it's usually more along the lines of I feel there's so many things going wrong with life, and there are particular things where it's not just a sadness or momentary kind of passing of little control, but really like those devastating moments where you're like, oh, that's something, that's someone that's gone. And the grief sets in, the despair sets in, and the way in which you try to process that and how it brings up old wounds and all of that stuff. I think when there's a joy that, shows up during those moments, it's kind of like waking up on a winter's morning and hearing a bird singing out your window. It's like, oh, there's life out there.
Yeah.
And we need that, I think. I've definitely needed that, and I'm very grateful for that joy that's carried me through, even when I sometimes lose it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you have found that through your relationship with God and with people around you?
Yeah, I think I have. I think it's something that did not originate in me. It's not something I crafted. It's not something that I've sustained. It's something that's been gifted to me. Yeah, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. One of the things that and I guess maybe because probably my teenage years was spent here in Australia, I've probably grown into and have now realized that our culture is very much accustomed to comfort, or at least geared towards that, and to seek it.
Yeah.
So pain and sometimes suffering, I guess there's a difference, it's been hard to process that. And then, well, I've learnt that it's hard to process that. That it's meant to be hard to process and to actually handle, and to go through it. So, when you're talking about joy through suffering, like that's one of the things that I've had to learn to become comfortable with as well. It's like, 'cause one of the things I think that neuroscience teaches that your brain actually changes and transforms. Like if you have pain that's deep enough, it'll change your brain and your way of thinking. And it's not just like obviously you become more cynical and things like that. I think that's probably more like symptoms of the fact that there's been deep change that's happened inside of you. So, like trying to be joyful. I guess the point I'm getting is trying to be joyful or having joy existing in the middle of suffering can seem foreign, because from my experience and what I know and have observed is that the world we live in, and we all live, I guess, in a Western civilization world, the story is different. It's get away from it, as far away from it as possible. You're in trenches, get on the mountaintop as soon as you can. whatever you got to do.
We're very determined to avoid pain. We're very, very determined to avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, I just took drugs for my headache, so
That's why they were made.
it's like.
Yeah.
But that obviously
Sell themselves.
that's me making a joke. But
Yeah,
you know, like
Yes.
um,
It's funny,
true.
but there's a truth to it too, right?
there is definitely a truth to it.
It's like the only
Yeah.
kind of industry on the planet, like that and life insurance, that they don't have to do anything really, particularly to sell themselves. We run to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And you know, that might be small, but it's indicative of a bigger thing out there, bigger concerns that's out there. But
Mm.
yeah, it's true. It's true. So how to have joy in the middle of suffering? That's a that's not an easy one. And you kind of have to be vulnerable to actually to actually admit that.
Yeah.
You know?
It doesn't make the suffering easier.
Oh, not at all. I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think more often than not, people kind of expect feelings to be singular, when more often they're actually, really, when you look at them, they exist in clusters.
What do you mean?
I'm angry, so that's just that. I'm angry. This person did this, and this. I'm focusing on that person. But when you kind of sit down and actually look at it for a little bit, and you're a little bit more honest and vulnerable, oh, I'm angry. This thing happened, but I'm angry. Something's going on with me. What's that anger doing? Is it covering maybe a softer emotion underneath it, protecting that one? Am I actually maybe feeling angry and also scared? Am I feeling scared because this has hit something? This has hit something that's really important. Am I not connected with that scaredness, and so I'm just thinking about the anger? And really, I'm not even thinking about the anger. I'm just acting on it because I'm focusing purely on the other person. So there's a lot going on with our emotions. They're tricky things, and they're really cool, and they cover us like our skin. But in saying that, more often than not, there are certain emotions. So that kind of we can get around. Go, oh, okay, anger, sadness, sure, okay. Or sorry, scaredness, fear. But when we're talking about something like, say, suffering and joy, we go, oh, they can't touch. It's like a 3-year-old trying to
Yeah, we
separate
think
the
about them as
peas and corns.
polar opposites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't let that touch.
Yeah.
That'll destroy. That won't work. Remember someone saying, how can someone be so tender and so angry? And it's like, oh, you can actually be both of those things at the same time. In fact, that's actually kind of what it is to be human sometimes. Our feelings and how we express ourselves aren't always simple. They're messy. They're complex. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not doing both of those things at the same time. And the more we learn about God and the way God's presented himself in the Bible,
Oh, he's a moody guy.
yeah, he's not
Well,
simple.
yeah.
That's one thing you
Not
cannot
simple.
say about Yahweh. He's not simple.
Yeah.
Or else we'd turn him into a robot, a vending machine, press certain buttons in our prayer and expect certain things in response, and get very angry if we didn't get those things, because we would be so used to a vending machine God. But we don't have a vending machine God. We don't even have a vending machine family, let alone other people in our lives. Why would we expect that of him?
Yeah.
And if we do, then we don't have the real God.
Is that I'm trying to think through it. I read I've been reading John in chapter 2. Jesus at the wedding at Cana. I don't know how you pronounce that, whatever. Anyway, so potato. He's the wedding. The wine runs out. His mum realizes the wine runs out, turns to him, yo, the wine's run out, Jesus. She knows what he can do, obviously. And he says to her, dear woman, New Living Translation, or woman, ESV. And I'm like, oh, yeah, here you go. Let's not talk about that one. He says, woman, what does that have to do with me? My time has not yet come. And then she turns around to the servants and says, do whatever he tells you. I'm thinking about that as you're talking, and you're thinking, it's not a slot machine. So she's having this interaction. She doesn't necessarily get what she wants in terms of response, or at least what we would pursue, because we're removed from that culture. doesn't necessarily get the response that she wants from God in flesh. And yet she still goes ahead. And so, like, there's this sometimes, like, you can read that and you just go, like, what is going on? Like, he doesn't. And so I wonder if that whole looking to God as a slot machine, put this in, you get what you want, maybe even like he's our bank account, you put in your card and you just withdraw. Whether or not that's like us trying to project our need for a perfect utopia environment on the inside, which is non-existent in any human, that we're trying to project that onto God because he holds the title God, therefore he ought to make that happen so that we feel like we've got control. The thing, like, emotions, when we kind of dive in that stuff, when you dive in that pool, it's complex, it's messy, but it can also threaten to overwhelm your senses, the reality, your reality, who you think you are, what you think is real, who you think God is, what you think your purpose is. Like, it's pretty big. So I wonder if it's a projection mechanism where we go, this is not perfect, but if something outside of me is perfect, then maybe I'll feel okay, or I'll just stash these suckers away, these emotions, these pools of things. I don't know. What's your thoughts? It's a theory. I'm just trying to get through. We're obviously not experts, but...
You ever heard of Terrence Malick?
Ooh, yeah, I've heard the name. Who is he?
He's a filmmaker.
What did he produce?
He's done a few. His most recent was A Hidden Life, about a World War II dissident, essentially, a Christian who said that he wouldn't be in the German military at that time.
Wait, German military?
Yeah. True story. Very, very profound. Did Thin Red Line, Tree of Life, Song to Song.
Oh, wow.
Voyage Through Time. A Knight's Cup.
What the heck am I doing? We've got a computer here.
Then there's some old ones as well, like Badlands and...
Oh, wow, okay.
I forget the other one. The first one.
So we got a thing. Yeah.
Heaven's something. Yeah, he doesn't make movies very often. His most celebrated is probably The Thin Red Line.
Amazing Grace. He did that. Song to Song. To the Wonder.
To the Wonder. Yeah, that was a good one.
Happy Times, Red Wing.
He's probably the
Yeah.
most theologically interested director in Hollywood.
Interested.
He gets away with saying things at a spiritual level because he's very gifted in his films in making them quite profound and beautiful. So the filming is exquisite. But his storytelling's a bit different because he doesn't use plot, he uses images to tell a story. So instead of, your normal movie will probably have maybe something like 30 to 50 scenes, his will have about 200. There'll just be lots of short ones. And so he has a way of telling stories. The reason why I bring him up is because, and he's a Christian, he's an interesting guy, doesn't ever take interviews or accept the awards that he wins either.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. He made a film called The Thin Red Line, I think back in 97, based off the Guadalcanal conflict in World War II. And you've got this, it's based off a book by James Joyce from that same name, and the idea of, how close it is to be near madness because you're near so much death and violence.
Yeah.
And really uncertainty. And when you were talking about overwhelm just a moment ago, JL, it reminded me of that. And also the projection, what you were talking about. And there's a line in that film, there's many, many really good lines in that film. There was one that stayed with me, and it said, we're all striving for salvation of our own,
through salvation of our own or for salvation of our own?
We're all striving for a salvation of our own,
Wow.
like
Mm.
um, like logs thrown from the fire. They're all trying to make it through the war, and they're also trying to make meaning of what their role is in the war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one guy says to another, you know, I kill someone, normally I'd go away for life. Here, I can do what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be the worst thing possible, and here it's excusable. Another person says, you know, we're all just here because it's about property. The whole damn thing's about property. You just got to try to survive. You got to make yourself an island. Another person says, you know, how you doing? Do you ever get lonely? And the soldier responds, only around people.
Wow.
It's a profound movie. It's often looking at the stories and the meaning making of the men in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Some are Christian and some are non-Christian. And the conversations between the religious and the atheists, I think, are quite profound and very vulnerable. And there's that line. And that line, I think, about how we're all striving for a salvation of our own, it's talking about how we get thwarted. We're trying to make a life that's going to be a good life, that's worth it. And whatever our plans are, well, it's like we're logs in the fire. We just fall out. We burn out. And our plans, they kind of get thrown out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop us from projecting, wanting that utopia that you're talking about and almost demanding it and longing for it.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of just take any semblance of it that we
Okay.
can get.
Yeah. Wherever we can.
Yeah. It'd be quite a scary thing, I think, to be in wartime. I think about it often.
In wartime.
Yeah. To be a soldier in a conflict. Because you're near the precipice, you're near the edge.
Yeah, I don't know if there is any or that we've even scratched thing about war veterans. The complexity of how much they have to kind of process through. I don't even think we've got capacity for that. Even though they're, that's been the reality for humanity throughout history. These conflicts, war has been part of humanity since the fall, and so. But the cruelty of it, and how much people have been, I don't know how much we would be able to comprehend, or even be able to process one person's whole experience of war. One's been in the trenches, and then how they process that. It's quite scary to think about. But hey, I'm reminded of James when he chapter 4 he talks about why do you wage wars?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that connections with our desires.
Yep.
You war and wage because you do not have, and you don't ask God. But when you ask, you ask for that. You can spend it on your own desires and on your selfish desires, and so there's that connection, isn't it, of like the war outside of ourselves, and maybe it's a fight for control. But then sometimes even the war within which we've been thrust into, trying to make meaning of that as well. When you're trying to fight for your own salvation, you still have to rely on yourself to make meaning of whatever it is that you're experiencing. That's a lot to put on a human, I think. Can't save ourselves. At least that's my belief.
And it's about like what that breaks down into actually meaning. Like what is it to be saved? What is it to have a salvation or a life that is worth it, meaningful, fulfilled?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think that living in Australia, I don't know if it's helped me to to practically practice the truth and nuance of that. And maybe it's that poorer countries have a little bit more of an advantage over this but that's not an excuse though to say that we cannot believe in Jesus just because we think like that's reducing God to. I'm just trying to think like what we like give to Him, giving us what we need. And so because we've taken care of the shelter, we've taken care of the for a lot of people their security, some income, those kinds of necessities. One of the things I've been thinking about has been how easy it is to just reduce, to disconnect life from God, to have purpose in Him because He defines it. For life to have meaning outside of God, and it's really easy to disconnect it because then if we don't need God, and God I guess has in many spaces has been reduced to He'll give you what you need. Well, if we take care of what we need, we become our own gods. In a sense, like there's a replacement principle that takes place of, oh, okay, then I'm God. I'm master of my own whatever destiny, life. And so like it's easy to reduce God to that. And then easy to reduce life to that.
Isn't that something to reduce life to that? It's the conversation that we're having. It's about us thinking as Christians, but it's the same conversation that people that aren't Christian are having as well.
What do you mean?
Because they've got the same questions. What is this life all about? Sure, they might have different answers, but they've got the same question. I think that's interesting. When you say just a moment ago, I forget.
It's all right, paraphrase.
I forget how to paraphrase. My brain goes to mush sometimes.
Did you think about a goat?
I didn't. Would that have been excused if I had? But yeah, I think we're trying to figure out what a good life is and what this life really is. We're trying to find things that are real. And I don't always think necessarily that the Christian is always right and that the non-Christian is always wrong. I think there's something in there where we learn from each other because we're asking better questions with the help of each other. And it's also because a lot of the time, if you go back 200 years ago, everybody agreed on this truth doesn't exist inside of us.
Yeah.
So we've got to go look for it. All right, well, we could use some help. All right, let's band together and look for it then. Now it's like, it's all inside every single person. Okay, how does that work? I don't know, because we can't really communicate that. And my truth, beats your truth. And it's like, oh, okay, this is a great way for a fight, not for truth seeking.
Yeah.
But I honestly think every once in a while you have these conversations with, co-workers, maybe family, extended family, dear friends, and you realize that you don't have the market cornered. We don't always necessarily know absolutely everything. We've been gifted a book that's been passed down through a tradition that is ridiculously tested and investigated and yields some powerful and integral and voracious truths that hold water and that challenge our subjective and objective thinking and allows us the opportunity to maybe even witness a true meaning of our lives. So there's something wonderful about how I think the Bible often talks about ultimate understanding, ultimate reality.
Yeah.
But there's lots of things along the way when we're not talking about something on that level that is an ultimate reality. When we're just talking about something more simple like, playing and, what that can mean for us. And I really, really enjoy hearing that from lots of different folk. Yeah. And I often learn from people that surprise me, that I wouldn't expect to hear something from. I go, oh, wow, you've worked really hard to figure that out too. You went looking for the truth.
Kind of stumbled into it. Eh?
Yeah. And it's usually because I've gravitated towards that person because they're asking the same questions I am.
Look at that. No longer studying, but still a student.
Always.
Any thoughts, Nate?
On which one? That was all.
On all of the things.
Sorry, that was a huge tangent.
No, that was
That was
great.
a great tangent.
That was good.
I've told you should write a book,
Interesting.
didn't I?
Don't know. Oh, yes, you did. Yeah, you did. I would be terrible at it.
It'd be great at narrating it. And I'd be like, okay, just put on the speech to text button and press play. Rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think that whole idea of seeking truth and then like the utopia idea you were bringing up, JL,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just
Well, I
only
mean,
speaking
it's-
from experience, I think, and just observation. It's very interesting to, like you were saying, like different people's non-Christian, Christian. I found it very fascinating, just like when I was saying and reading back my old journals, and just observing the teenagers that you work with who come from a different story that they've lived out or that's been written due to circumstance or however. I think it's interesting to think of, as you guys were talking, I guess that kept going in my head. Is just like the kind of the story that you believe, the narrative that you've kind of shaped your life around, shaped your habits around, shaped your friendships around. I think is very important. And I think reading back, I was just like, there was definitely a different story that I was believing about faith, about God. There was a playfulness, and there was like, being a uni student for a while, and then like not having too much money to my name, and then it's just like there was that rawness, and there's the story that I believed at that time was that Matthew 6:33, believe, like seek Him first in everything, and not that that's not any more true now, but I think it's it's really quite interesting and maybe quite fascinating to just what you kind of hold on to, what story you hold on to really can take you through things, whether it be in a negative way, take you and help you to make terrible decisions, or it helps you to kind of live a healthier thing. And for a while there was that paradigm that, I was living off prayer basically for a while because struggling through different things like trying to find financially and stuff. And I think for me, the utopia and the good thing and like the good life for me at that point in my story was that I had worship, I had God, and I had good friends, and that was all I needed and wanted at that time. And that was kind of the thing, that being out in nature was like ritually every Saturday would just go hiking. And that was a story, I believe, like the closer I could get to God, like everything will be fine. And then somewhere along the journey, there's a story that I started believing that things and titles and routines and pleasing people was kind of the way to kind of navigate life. And then, Jesus was on the side. And I observe teenagers as they come through, like who have gone through trauma, who have gone through just different situations. Interesting to see that that survival mode, but also like just seeing the light bulb moments when they realize that there is another way of living or thinking about how you could live or another story you could believe. It's very powerful. And I think as you guys were talking, it's just like for Christians and non-Christians, like we all find our sense, I guess, of where we fit in the world by what we have continually told ourselves, that this is who I am because blah, blah, blah. This is who I am because my parents are this, or this is who I am because, I'm capable of certain things, like, I don't know, musicianship or sports or academics or whatever it is. Like, and yeah, it's interesting to observe that, not just kind of go to the cliche of like, you know, the story of the Bible and stuff, which is the story we should believe, but it's just interesting how to we kind of make, we all have our kind of our own story that we're trying to live out versus the one that's actually been designed for us. And it's very interesting to hear how kids will, like, you in your own story and in the way you've lived your life till this point, it's like, what do you mean? Like, that doesn't make sense. But to a kid who's like had to be in survival mode because parents have done this or have been homeless for a certain amount of years, it's like, what do you mean it doesn't make sense? It makes perfect sense to me because this is who I am. This is my story. And utopia for them could actually just be a roof over your head. And I think, yeah, I think it's good to examine the stories that we have because that informs the habits, and of course that flows onto your friendships and stuff. Because I guess, you know, the fancy Bible word is liturgy, but like we're being formed one way or the other. And that's, yeah, it's interesting to like, that's been playing in my head recently because just listening to a lot of John Mark Comer, just like stories are very powerful.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to examine your habits because they'll tell what story you're believing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from that, yeah, that's what keeps coming in my head because I don't know where the phrase utopia came from, but I don't know like what's the original thought that came from that word, but it's one that we throw around all the time. But I don't know. Whenever people say a utopia, I have this image of like an Avatar situation where like things are just nice and very Pocahontas vibes, but it's like, yeah, it's very, even that, just like examining why we believe we should actually seek a utopia. Like, is that a story that you believe in? Like we were saying earlier, run away from struggle to find comfort is a better thought pattern than to kind of like embrace joy in the midst of suffering. Yeah, so I think, I know for myself, there's a lot of rethinking and a lot of ways to kind of just do apprenticeship differently to Jesus, because we're doing apprenticeship to something, the world, our ideas, being formed by it. So, yeah, I don't know, that was interesting, like the stories you believe. That's what I kind of came running through my head anyway. But again, yeah, the stories can, yeah, like the Hebrew tradition of like oral history and stuff and things being handed down, like it's very important, like who you tell your stories to, I think, and who's actually in the same boat.
Yeah. We actually learn a lot from certain cultures that put that a little bit higher so that we can go, oh, that's a bit weird. What are you doing over there doing that thing? Aboriginal culture, very big on that. Story time.
Oral tradition.
Oral traditions are usually focusing on the stories that people live by. The Greeks, that was a huge one for them as well, the ancient Greeks.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Think about the, Greek tragedy or the Greek comedy. These were periods where they were talking about what would happen if you went up against the gods, because the gods were not to be messed with. So you got to fall in line. And if you don't, well, there's an example of the story, and you don't want that story. You want a different story.
So
Nowadays, it's usually a little bit more subtle. So the big one for us probably in the West would be advertising. You turn on the TV or you look up on your mobile and you're getting sold something, and it's silently giving you the allure of promise. If you buy this car, you'll be this person.
Yeah.
If you do this thing, then you'll become that. And so we live by covenants. We live by things that are given to us as promises for that better world.
Mm.
And you go all the way back really, really far. The first person that really started talking about this and actually got it recorded and it didn't get destroyed was Plato. He would be talking about the good life. We're all trying to figure out what the good life is. And so it's a question. But the question is often received not just with a simple answer. It's usually in the shape of a story. Because we then take that story and we find ourselves in that story and then we try to live that story out.
Mm.
But that means that stories have an immense amount of power to them.
Mm.
And what happens if we get the wrong story, you know? Well, what happens if we don't really notice that we're inside a story?
Yeah.
J.R. Tolkien said it's like we've fallen into a story. He puts that in his Lord of the Rings novel. It's like we've fallen into a story, Sam says to Frodo.
Mm.
So we don't always notice it. We don't notice that we're, living on these kind of railway lines that have been structured, and that's how we use to navigate certain situations, because that's what we should do, right? That's what is going to lead me to this thing over here. And it's quite hard, I think, when we go through periods where we're confused or we're in pain, because we become less clear of who we are, or we start to realize that we weren't really living by one story, but really by another. We start to find out things about ourselves that kind of worry us or shame us or scare us.
And I wonder if, well, maybe the whatever internal turmoil happens as a result of encountering contradictions to the stories that we might not even been aware we were living. Whether or not those in itself are signs that tell us, oh, I've actually not been living inside the truth. I don't know who it was who said it, but there's this someone alluded to. Truth is what happens when your internal world meets reality, and they clash. Or maybe it's reality is what happens when your inside expectations are dashed by what's outside of you. Along those lines, but just thinking through that and how ridiculously well our lives, every person's life, I'm convinced of this, that every single person's life is very, in some really weird way, ordered to the way that they will, the internal story and narratives that they believe will always be tested. And I don't know, like, there's obviously a ton of factors about that, but I think I'm fairly confident that I'll still get to, I'll get to 50, and even though I might become more comfortable in my own skin, there will still be a way for my life and lived experience to challenge whether or not the stories and narratives and principles and presuppositions that I'm holding on to, whether they are worth holding on to, whether they're holding me, or whether or not I'm just I've subscribed to a new, maybe it's an ad that's underneath there, that's kind of really the driving force. It might not actually be truth, because I think one of the really clever ways our civilization has come to do things is how to deposit seeds of thought within people in a way where they might not necessarily be aware of it. So they fall into the story, and maybe now more than ever, people are so inundated. I'm really speaking for just probably our our society, not necessarily the rest of the 80% of the world, but we're probably as well so inundated and have access to so many things that the I guess maybe self-awareness of I've fallen into a story. It's not necessarily, there's not a lot of space for it to be thought through and gone, why am I doing it? Like, why do I have these behaviors? Because we're so accessible to everything. I've got two screens open now. I've got two screens open. The level of incoming is beyond the created human capacity to actually be able to process.
Yeah.
And so when you take away that space, and I don't know, maybe, well, obviously there is Jesus clearly refers to the ruler of this world, and so that it's really set up in a way where to follow Jesus it's actual work, it's actual intentional effort, where you have to make room for otherwise. There are things within me that are just like subscribe to this and this and this and that, and because God is continually interrupting people and shaking them, well, not shaking them, but waking them. I'm realizing this more and more, and then going, okay, wow, we're super distracted. We've got this. So that's why I think I'm convinced that life is so well set up to challenge these narratives and these stories that are in there, to an extent where we kind of have to wake up and go, why am I doing this? More than any really created creature, to be self-aware enough to, and also to self-correct as we walk. So I think there's definitely it's worth paying attention to pain. It's worth paying attention to suffering, because it's, and I wasn't always of the mindset of that. like I said before, I wanted to go like the other way, which is a narrative, I think. I would have wanted to go complete opposite direction to pain and suffering. Whereas actually there are gifts in it. Like, how silly does it even sound saying that there are gifts in pain and in suffering?
We're probably the only followers of a particular religion where it describes the source of that religion and the God of that religion as somebody who actually is behind suffering as well. So usually it's, suffering is almost an entity and it's, waged against. But even with Yahweh, that's still a part of my plan, he says.
Yeah, that's crazy.
In fact, I'm going to send it to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to you. In fact, you want happiness? Happiness is really good.
Mm.
But suffering can be good too. How can suffering be good? But he keeps us there. He allows us to kind of be in it. I remember, interestingly enough, that same director has this great line, little monologue in Night of Cups, where a playwright in Hollywood played by Christian Bale is going through a series of relationships, and he's having a conversation, a pastoral conversation with somebody near the end of the film, and this person gives him some advice, and he says, suffering is transcendental. It's transcendental. It lifts us up from the world. It allows us to kind of see beyond a happiness that we would deem for ourselves, a different kind of happiness. And that we could actually, in fact, consider that a gift when somebody like that would send us suffering. What a strange thing, but
yet. Yeah.
It does. It lifts
Yeah.
us up. We hear better, I think,
Yeah.
when we're in
Mm.
pain, when we're in suffering. We hear differently.
That's very true.
We don't want it. We don't want the suffering, and we don't want
Mm.
something that we have loved so dearly to be lost.
Mm.
And so we can't stop that. And that brings up, immense feelings of helplessness and rage and all of that. And that can be terrifying too. But there's something more than just what we're going through. There's something else that's kind of
Yeah.
unfolding.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're falling almost into a different story at that point. We're given a chance to see if maybe we've been living a story that is preferable but not needed.
Mm.
And we sometimes don't get those opportunities very often.
Yeah.
We do. We get put on an autopilot. We have so many things given to us. I often think about what it would be like to be my parents or my grandparents at particular ages, like their working years. It probably wouldn't be surprising to know that each of you came from families that maybe just had the one TV growing up. Maybe
Yep.
more than one, but more often not just the one, right?
Yep.
How weird is that
Yeah.
to think back to, and that's not that long ago, really.
Mm.
No.
I mean, it might feel long to us, but like historically speaking, we're living in one of the most comfortable periods of history.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we
Mm.
don't have problems, but boy, do we have blessings.
Yeah.
Maybe too many.
Yeah.
We can get distracted with that.
It's so true. Yeah, it is so true. I was listening to a guy who talks about how the past, maybe these things got probably accelerated for us or heightened during the pandemic 2 years, the instability. But he refers to it as a, like, instability is normal. And the past 15 to 20 years of stability and comfort, which I think has probably been connected to economic growth and technological advancement a lot more than anything else to create the kind of conditions that we have. He says that's actually been an illusion. And I think that the other thing that's really interesting about humanity is we have ways of self, of initiating self-delusion as well. And taking that in instead of pain, suffering, whatever reality has to offer. Not necessarily always pain and suffering, but whatever reality has to offer in a way, like coping mechanisms.
Heart is deceitful above all things.
Right?
Who can understand it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
It's
Thank you.
amazing.
Yeah.
Even in the context where he writes that, right? Which is a I'm warning you context, like, hey. But he says, well, don't trust your heart. Yeah. I'm just mindful of time. We got 10 minutes. This just went so deep. It's amazing. Okay, you must come back. We can't do this without you now.
I'd
Kidding.
like to hear about what it's been like for each of you doing these podcasts.
This podcast?
Yeah.
Well, in 5 minutes, can you just tell?
It's 300 seconds each.
5 minutes or less. By the way, thanks, man. Like, this has been...
Oh,
It's been awesome.
very kind.
I
I
feel
feel like you guys have taught me a lot.
I feel like
really-
we've had deep conversations before, and I've just missed them so much.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, man, yeah.
It's the Jody Lightfoot years.
Just a journey light for years.
And everyone, and
But
as
then-
Simon Bunstead, and we'd catch up, and there'd be a group of us, and we'd drop everything we were doing, and at some point during the night, somebody would say something, and it would just start
and
a
it would
DNM,
spark.
and it'd be
Oh,
really
my
good.
Lord.
There'd be a lot
Oh,
of
nice.
safety, a lot of respect, a lot of curiosity, and worldviews would be shared, and questions would be asked, and I think
Is that still a thing now? Like it's just
Good
the
point.
automatic nature of that.
You have to almost have a way in which there's a culture enough, big enough amongst a few people at that time in that group dynamic
Mm.
where there's a maturity.
Mm.
It's like, all right, we're going to ask some things. We're going to ruffle some feathers. It'll probably even be a little offensive.
Great.
In fact, we'll be doing it wrong if we don't
if
get
you
that.
don't- yeah, that's perfect.
And then there's that playfulness, and there's that curiosity, and then there's that respect, and you know, there's points where the conversation gets to the end, but people are heard,
Mm.
and something's taken,
Yeah.
and I don't get that a lot. It's true. I remember those periods too, JR, and I really like that. I think that's probably why we both remember them quite fondly, and everybody involved remembers
They're
them
very
quite fondly.
formative.
Yeah.
I think for me, because I listened to, you know, like you said, diverse number of opinions, and that's what I found. Like, so when you ask exactly, you know, what it's been like, I was talking to another friend of mine who's from England, and I've got to bring Graham in. He's differently
Graham.
thinking.
Yeah.
And so
Nice.
he's and I was saying to him about the process because he had a podcast as well, and I've gone back and listened to his thoughts on the podcast, and I said, dude, you've got to continue. You need to make sure that you are doing this, because first of all, I don't get to talk to him all the time, so I'm appreciative of him sharing his thoughts. Because he's free to, and he can share whatever is actually on his mind. That's what a podcast allows you to do. And so he told me and asked, and he said, yeah, just, you know, time. There's been various things that have affected it, and he asked me why I'm continuing things, and I'm like, you know, I've actually found, just chatting with Nate this year, and you know, making a commitment to actually do podcasting regularly, that my way of thinking is changing and transforming, and I'm really actually super excited about how, when I walk out of this room or when we finish having a conversation, how differently I've changed. Because I know that people change when they are in proximity to other people and they actually share themselves. Like, I want to talk to you, not platitudes, which is what I love about this conversation. Where we actually, it's like, we don't come with answers. We're just adding to whatever it is that is going on here, and then we're gonna come away with some stuff. There's gonna be more that's added, and then when we come back, we'll be completely different people. I've taken a part of you with me. That's what's gonna happen. And so I'm like, I said, I'm loving the process of seeing how much my thinking is changing and being aware of how much my thinking is changing, because I get to borrow his brain, I get to borrow your brain, and then I get to see, oh yeah, cool, my brain is tiny, and there's room for growth,
Yeah.
and there's so much stuff I can learn from people.
Yeah.
That's fun. So I will pay money to have that happen, because I don't want to stay a small person. I want to continue to grow and etc. So that's what's been like for me, Nathan. I don't want to take you 5 minutes. I literally just done 5 minutes, so I'm aware of time.
I think for me, it's just being able to have those moments of, yeah, like you were saying. I think it's discovery for me. I think if I could sum it up in a word, maybe like discovery, because like I get to, like, sometimes, like, you remember, I don't know if it was the last one, the one before, when there was just like a tangible sense of the Holy Spirit in the space.
My goodness.
Like discovery in the sense of like just discovering new layers of like God's presence, but also like this guy's super smart. Like you're both ridiculously smart, and just like
Have you met Matthew?
yeah,
I'm not smart.
I want to be Matthew.
yeah, me too. When I grow up, but I think like discovering like the feeding of other people, but also I think it's weird how like, not weird, but like it's a cliches. But it's like just stepping into the space, like even today and the other times when I felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't go, whatever. And that day when like we sat in, the Holy Spirit was here. It was like that was perfectly what I needed in that time. And like even now, like talking through all this stuff, and it's just like, because it's been a crazy week at work and all the emotional roller coaster of kids and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, that's true. What kind of story am I believing? Like, there is joy
Even
in
about
suffering.
that, yeah,
there is joy
yeah.
in suffering. Like
Flip.
I think it's it's crazy. I love the discovery aspect of it because there is no like like to a certain degree there's no like plan.
We don't know where this is gonna end up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The discovery aspect of like figuring it out and doing it as we're going and like realizing something new about myself and realizing something like, oh, this is different. Like, because every other situation that I can think of in my life, there is a plan. There is something that's going to happen as I think it's going to happen or as I want it to happen. But here it's just like, all right, let's go. Like, discover, like freedom in that. And yeah, I don't know. This is why I love it about it. But also sometimes I say things, I'm like, oh, flip, I need to listen to that as well. Like, flipping out, throwing rocks in my glass house over here. So, yeah, that's why I love this. And a part of it for me has been kind of just discovery. I love being able to discover new aspects of ourselves. And so
And
there's no real agenda. It's just like, have fun.
hanging out, and other people get to listen and counsel us. I literally had another
I'll send the invoice later.
brain goat fart. I had another brain goat fart. I was just like, imagine doing this with an actual goat in that corner. So sorry. Disruptive and absolutely out of, like, just anyway. But yeah, one of the things I thought about when we literally started, we just started to dive deep into the specific topic of vulnerability was like, hey, I don't know if there are a lot of spaces, and I've heard of a couple where men get to be vulnerable. We're just a bunch of dudes, talking about our feelings and stuff in life and how we don't know things and how we're discovering things. And I'm like, this is special. This is precious. It's great. Just had a moment like towards the beginning. I thought, yeah, and I'm thankful for you too for saying yes and for sharing. Even though it's going to be distributed to the world, still doesn't take away for how.
Wait, you never said anyone was going to listen to this.
I have like 4 people that listen to this.
That's what the microphones are for. I thought we were just having a conversation, JR.
Look, tell all your family. Might add like one more subscription. No. But yeah, I'm really appreciative of it, and I'm mindful of time. Any final words of wisdom within 30 seconds?
I'm very grateful to got to listen to both of you today, but also in the last few minutes each as well, sharing what it's like for each of you doing this kind of work. There's something wonderful about being in the unknown. I think I'd forgotten that for a long time, and then there was a particular relationship that had reminded me of that, and I thought, it's not easy not knowing what's around the corner. But being able to kind of live through that and be surprised by that, good and bad and ugly, whatever it is, like that allows quite a lot of life to happen. Yeah. And I need that. So it's been really nice not knowing as well. It's a big part of the job in the counselling gig. My sessions aren't planned either. I have to go with the client's journey and to really listen to their story. And
that's cool.
I've become more and more grateful for that, and I've definitely been shaped actually by the clients and the people that are in my life.
That's right.
Because they've helped me discover things too, and I'm really grateful for that. There's a lot that I don't know. I'm definitely not smart. I don't know where that comes from when people say that. It's genuinely absurd. But
Take the compliment.
Take the cake and eat it.
Never. But yeah, I'm really grateful to have come along.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Good.
We're going to stop it there.
Yeah, I think so.
Surely we got to do a shout out to Dave.
Shout out to Dave.
What
10
up,
years
Dave?
coming up soon for
Oh,
being at church.
Dave's
so
his pastor,
legend.
and he's like, he gives us like these nuggets,
Yeah.
and then I got to share with you the last nugget later. But he
Pastor
just,
Dave.
Pastor Dave, what
let's
up?
go.
What up? You out here?
Papa D.
You out here? You out here killing it, bro? Yo, that
So
was
you do
stupid.
raps.
That was stupid.
Have some goat in it.
Goat raps. How good.